60 years ago, a woman ran up a hillside with her arms open wide, and the world exhaled. The Alps stretched behind her. The orchestra rose beneath her. For a moment, everything felt possible. The cast who made that happen became faces recognized across 3 generations. But what happened to the family who climbed those mountains once the cameras stopped rolling? Let's find out what became of them all. Julie Andrews as Maria, the woman who ran up that hillside, arms open, voice carrying clean across the Austrian Alps, was 29 years old at the time of its release. We cover the real stories behind the casts that shaped your childhood. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Julie Andrews, born in Walton-on-Thames, England in 1935. She brought something to Maria that no amount of rehearsal could manufacture: warmth, with a quiet, unmoving spine underneath it. Maria was never soft in her hands. She was someone who happened to be kind and happened to be immovable in exactly the same breath. Before the film, she had spent nearly 2 years on Broadway playing Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady, opposite Rex Harrison. The role felt like hers. Then came the film version, and the producers hired Audrey Hepburn. Their reasoning was simple. Andrews was a stage actress, not a film star. Not yet. That was the end of it as far as they were concerned. That same year, 1964, she made Mary Poppins. The Academy gave her the Oscar for Best Actress. The Sound of Music followed 12 months later and won Best Picture. The woman the studio said wasn't ready had just delivered the 2 highest-grossing films of the decade, back to back. In 1997, surgery to remove non-cancerous nodules on her vocal cords permanently altered her singing voice. She kept working. 5 decades of film, television, voice work, and children's books written with her daughter, Emma Walton Hamilton. In 2026, Julie Andrews is 90 years old. She is still working. The industry told her she wasn't a film star. She spent the next 60 years making them look foolish for saying it. Christopher Plummer as Captain von Trapp. In the last interviews he gave before he died, Christopher Plummer said something that surprised people who had followed his career for decades. He said he had made peace with it, with the film, with Maria, with all of it. That was not always the case. Plummer was born in Toronto in 1929. By the time he arrived in Salzburg to play Captain von Trapp, he was already one of the most respected classical stage actors in the English-speaking world, a man who had spent years inside Shakespeare and Chekhov, and the kind of work that earns hushed, serious reviews. The Sound of Music felt like a detour. He called it, in multiple interviews across 4 decades, the sound of mucus. He said it with the kind of practiced contempt that made clear he meant every word. Then something shifted. He kept working brilliantly through the decades that followed. For his performance in Beginners, released in 2010, he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor at the 2012 ceremony, at 82 years old. At that moment, he was the oldest competitive Oscar winner in Academy history. The man who spent 50 years dismissing the film that made him famous had just been handed the industry's highest honor. Sadly, Christopher Plummer died on February 5, 2021, at his home in Weston, Connecticut, from injuries sustained in a fall. He was 91 years old. The captain who couldn't show love, played by a man who took nearly 50 years to admit the role, had meant something after all. Eleanor Parker as the Baroness. The most underrated performance in the entire film belongs to Eleanor Parker. She was 42 when they filmed it. She played Baroness Schrader with such precise, cool elegance that audiences disliked her and felt faintly ashamed of themselves for doing it. That is a much harder trick than it sounds. Parker made the Baroness real enough to pity and composed enough to resent, simultaneously, in every scene she walked into. Born in Cedarville, Ohio in 1922, she had been a significant Hollywood presence for 20 years before the Baroness arrived. 3 Academy Award nominations for Best Actress: Caged in 1950, Detective Story in 1951, Interrupted Melody in 1955. The industry nicknamed her the Woman of 1,000 Faces and meant it as a compliment. She never won, not once. 3 nominations, the industry's open admiration, and somehow the statue went to someone else every single time. After The Sound of Music, she worked through the 1960s and 70s in television, then quietly stepped back from the screen. Eleanor Parker died on December 9, 2013, age 91, from pneumonia. The Baroness lost the captain, but Eleanor Parker's loss was quieter than that, and older than that, and it had been happening her entire career. Peggy Wood as Mother Abbess. She was 72 years old when they filmed her on those Abbey staircases. Peggy Wood was born in Brooklyn in 1892, and by the time The Sound of Music went into production, she had been performing for more than 50 years. Broadway since 1910, 8 seasons as the lead of Mama on CBS through the late 1940s and 1950s, one of early American television's most beloved family dramas. She carried herself through that Abbey with the particular stillness of someone who has simply run out of reasons to be nervous on a set. Her singing voice in the film is not her voice. Every note attributed to the Mother Abbess, including Climb Every Mountain, was dubbed entirely by a singer named Marjorie McKay. The voice belongs to someone else. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences nominated Peggy Wood for Best Supporting Actress for that performance. What they were nominating was her face, her hands, the gravity she communicated without producing a single sung note of her own. Peggy Wood died on March 18, 1978, age 86. The Abbess gave Maria permission to love. Wood gave audiences 86 years of quiet, unshowy craft. and earned an Oscar nomination for a performance she delivered entirely in silence. Charmian Carr as Liesl. Charmian Carr was 21 years old and had never appeared in a professional film when they handed her the opening number. Think about what that means. The number that sets the emotional temperature for the entire film, the one that had to land immediately or the whole thing started cold, was given to a woman with no prior credits. She walked into that gazebo and she was Liesl, completely, without visible effort. Carr was born in Chicago in 1942. Some modeling, some local theater, nothing that would have prepared anyone on that production to trust her with that moment. But they did, and she delivered it. Sadly, Charmian Carr died on September 17, 2016, age 73, from complications of a rare form of dementia. 73 years old. That number still doesn't sit right. After the film, she made one small television appearance, a musical called Evening Primrose in 1966, and then she stopped. Not from rejection, not from failure. She chose. She became an interior designer in Los Angeles, built a real and successful business, decorated homes for friends and castmates, and wrote 2 books about the making of the film and the people she had made it with. One role, one perfect performance, and then a quiet, deliberate, fully lived life built entirely on her own terms. Liesl learned that love and loss arrive together. Carr spent 50 years proving that what comes after the loss can still be beautiful. Nicholas Hammond as Friedrich. Nicholas Hammond faced the same crossroads Charmian Carr had. The question every young actor from a beloved film eventually has to answer. Was this a beginning, or was this the whole story? He was born in Washington, D.C. in 1950, and was 14 years old when he played Friedrich von Trapp. Friedrich was the eldest boy, the one burning to be taken seriously long before anyone was ready to take him that way. Before The Sound of Music, he had already appeared in Lord of the Flies, in 1963 Peter Brook's adaptation of the William Golding novel, shot on location in Puerto Rico, and released when Hammond was just 13 years old. That is not a small beginning. What came next is the part that stops people cold. In 1977, Nicholas Hammond put on a very different costume. He became Peter Parker. He played Spider-Man in CBS's live-action series, The Amazing Spider-Man. 13 episodes across 2 seasons. Friedrich von Trapp, Spider-Man, the same person. That sentence still doesn't quite feel real, and yet there it is. He eventually relocated to Australia and built a long, respected career in Australian film and television, working steadily, quietly, entirely on his own terms. In 2026, Nicholas Hammond is 75 years old and still acting. Friedrich wanted to grow up faster than life would allow. Hammond took his time, and it turned out that was the right pace all along. Heather Menzies as Louisa. Heather Menzies was born in Toronto in 1949 and was 14 when she played Louisa, the mischievous middle daughter, the one who moved first in every group scene, the one you noticed without quite knowing why. She continued acting through the 1970s, appearing in Logan's Run on television in 1977. But the defining detail of her life after the film is not professional, it is personal. In 1975, she married actor Robert Urich. They stayed together for 27 years, raised 3 children, built a life far removed from the hills of Salzburg. When Urich was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, she stayed. When he died in 2002, she kept going. Sadly, Heather Menzies died on December 24, 2017. She was 68 years old. Brain cancer, Christmas Eve. She had survived her husband by 15 years. She raised her children. She did what had to be done, every morning, without making a production of her own grief. Louisa was always the one who caused a little trouble. Menzies turned out to be the one who endured the most, and the one who never once asked anyone to notice. The rest of the family, the remaining members of the world of The Sound of Music, scattered in directions nobody could have predicted. Richard Haydn, who played the cheerfully self-serving Max Detweiler, had been a beloved comic character actor for decades before the film. He also voiced the Caterpillar in Disney's Alice in Wonderland. He died on April 25, 1985, age 80. Max always found a way to land softly. Haydn did too. Dwayne Chase as Kurt. Dwayne Chase, who played Kurt, left acting entirely and spent his career as an environmental geologist. He is approaching 75 in 2026. The hills were apparently not enough. He needed the whole planet. Angela Cartwright as Brigitte. Angela Cartwright, who played the quietly bookish Brigitte, built a second artistic life as a photographer and published author. Creativity, it turned out, never required a screen. Debbie Turner as Marta. Debbie Turner and Kim Karath both stayed connected to the film and the people who made it, which, for something that took this much of their young lives, is its own kind of loyalty. Daniel Truhitt as Rolf. And then there is Daniel Truhitt, Rolf, the boy who sang in that gazebo in 1964, all nervous charm and misguided loyalty, trying to figure out who he was going to be. He is 82 years old in 2026. He still performs at Sound of Music events. He still shows up for the film and the people who love it. 60 years on, and he is still singing. If you want more Then and Now stories like this, subscribe and drop a comment. Which cast member's story hit you the hardest? I read every single one.